The vampire counts march forth.
Hello and welcome to another Total War Warhammer guide. Today we are looking at some of the utility, some of the bit more unusual units in the Undead Empire. Oh, sorry, the vampire counts. Keep calling them undead. They are undead, but they're vampire counts. I love the way these Fel Bats are animated. They do look proper swarmy. So we're starting off with the Fel Bats, a very utility unit, and also the Direwolves. Again, we're utility. We're going to talk about through this the differences between the units, and then how you'd use them in battle. And then we'll look at the Crypt Horrors. So firstly, the Fel Bats. They're a very cheap unit. They look spectacular. Really unusual to have this sort of flying unit, and I think they look amazing. They're weak against armor, and they're expendable. As we said, they're cheap. The unit is comparably cheap to recruit, maintain, and replenish. So even if you get like 3/4 of that unit wiped out in a battle, they're going to replenish really quickly. They're great early on in the campaign, but also I always take a unit or two of these, and I'll tell you why when we go through the more sort of how to use them in battle. So they come in a unit of 45. And they have 2,600 hit points, 0 armor. Like, they're going to fall. You know, bats don't wear armor. So it's just not a thing. Leadership, pretty dreadful. Even for vampire counts, 30 leadership. But they have incredible speed, 120 speed. Melee attack of 14. Defense is 48, which is really good. And I imagine that's because they're so quick and it's going to be hard to hit one, basically. They got a weapon strength of 22 with their bitey claws, and pretty dreadful charge of 6. So they cause fear, meaning that it lowers the leadership of units that they're fighting. They're also undead, and like all undead units, instead of routing and running away when their leadership gets low and they're beaten in combat, these will just start crumbling. And what that happens is, rather than running away, they just start taking more and more damage, so they'll just die off quicker. There's benefits to that, in that you're going to fight your undead will always fight to the last man, or bat in this case, which is great because you can stall a unit for a longer period of time. But also the downside is that you can absolutely get wrecked and lose your entire unit much quicker than you would, because you know an Empire unit's already run away and halfway across the battlefield, whereas these are just going to fight to the end. So pretty good unit, and we'll explain how to use them in the fight again very shortly. Next up, we've got a similar unit, slightly different uses, but they're the Direwolves, and they are very fast, 95 speed, which is great for a ground unit. No armor, leadership of 30, melee attack 26, defense 12, weapon strength 22, but a better charge. That's important to know. Better charge than the Fel Bats of 18, which is pretty decent. So they cause fear like the Fel Bats. They also have a thing called Vanguard Deployment. Now, Vanguard Deployment lets them deploy outside your normal area of deployment. This yellow line dictates where we can deploy in a battle. The white line dictates where we can deploy with our Vanguard units. The red is where the enemy deploys, so we can deploy behind the enemy if we wanted to, or just over in these trees for a little assassination attempt, jumping out surprise attack. So Vanguard is a really helpful skill. So that's a big difference between the two units. They also suffer from crumbling and stuff because they're undead. Thirdly, and these a lot different, is the Crypt Horrors. Now these are almost like your troll unit, I would say. They're basically the vampire count troll unit. They're handsome. He wants a kiss, doesn't he? They are armor piercing with their sort of bone axes. That's nice. Probably using their defeated foes as weapons. They also do poison attacks, which reduces the target speed damage whilst increasing their vigor, which is like their stamina, their tiredness. They also have regeneration, much like trolls. So regeneration, we'll go through that when we'll go through that on the actual stat panel. So these come in units of 9. Sorry, the hounds come in units of 60 compared to the Hellbats 45. The trolls, I was going to say. The Crypt Horrors come in units of 9, much like the trolls. They got 5,760 hit points, 40 armor, 44 leadership, again, poor leadership, 51 pace, which is actually quite good. I say pace because I'm used to playing Football Manager. 51 speed, which is pretty good for a ground unit, quite long-legged. They also have a melee attack of 30, which obviously the part of that is poison. If you ever want to know the breakdown of your unit, you can hover over here and it'll show you exactly what it does. So it's really, really good, especially combined with other attacks. So 30 damage, melee defense is 28, Strength is 73, and again, with armor piercing, which is really helpful, and a decent charge bonus of 30. So they cause fear. They're undead. They have crumbling and everything like that. So they have regeneration, which is a passive that constantly works, and it replenishes the hit points of your unit, which is brilliant. But it does give them a flame weakness, plus 20% flame weakness. Now last video we looked at Hex Wraith, which do flame damage. And this is why I said in the Hex Wraith video, use them against trolls, because they would do lots more damage, stop their regeneration and stuff like that. So that's why you'd use them. So let's have a quick muck around fight while we just discuss how you'd use them in battle. So we're going to use our Vanguard Deployment and put them in. I'm going to use them basically as a scouting unit, so I can see exactly where the enemy is deploying. Before moving up my main 2 units. So, the way I'd use Fel Bats, for me mainly, I think they're a brilliant distraction force. They're cheap, easy to replenish, they've got amazing speed, so they can run around anything. You can have a unit of, Reichsguard chasing them and just run circles around them and just go, yeah, this is brilliant, because this is such a cheap unit. Even if they did no damage the entire fight, if they've distracted a couple of units, then they've done their job totally. You can also use them as flank and rear chargers, but they've got such a dreadful charge bonus and they're not very fighty. That I think there's better units for it, including the Direwolves. I think are a better use for them. So that's mainly how I do. You can go after like artillery crews and stuff like that with the Fel Bats, because you can so quickly get around the back of the battlefield, or tie down a wizard and see if you can try to take him out. That's a pretty good use as well. Obviously, we're not going to use them right now because we're just going to charge them in like crazy people. So the difference is with the Direwolves. Obviously, their Vanguard Deployment really helps, but the bigger thing for me is that they're slightly more fighty and they have a decent, it's not great, but it's a better charge, let's say. So I'm more likely to use these as flank and rear charges, much like you'd use the Black Knights, but they're cheaper, more expendable, and you can use them. Obviously, they're weak against armor, so you want to go out for the sort of basic spearmen, that type of troop. Enemy zombies if you're fighting other vampire counts, stuff like that. So, and you can use them for the any quick cavalry you can use for chasing down missile infantry and artillery crews. That's never a bad use for them. Right, should we just charge these in like crazy people just for funsies, just so we can see them. Right, so next up we've got the Crypt Ghouls, and the Crypt Ghouls are definitely different because Crypt Horrors, sorry. The way I'm going to use these Crypt Horrors in my main army is part of the... Oh, they look spectacular. Is that I'm going to use these as part of my main army force, because the main reason is because of their poison damage. Not only are they good at fighting and they're going to stay in the fight a while, you need to keep them leadership up, so I'm going to make sure that the general's nearby to keep these guys in the fight and stop them crumbling as long as possible, as we can see. So even though my unit's losing... they're just going to stay there forever. So even if you manage to tie up a couple of units for a couple of minutes on the left flank, that is a worthy use of these, even though they're doing like literally no damage whatsoever at all. And as you can see, they're crumbling to pieces now. So we'll send our general up here. So the way I'd use these is part of my main battle line, and because of this poison damage is debuffing the enemy, that allows my other troops, my Graveguard, my zombies, my skeleton spearmen, all that sort of stuff, it will help them fight better. That's the big part. So not only are they decent at fighting themselves, they are going to help me, do better against the enemy while, using their debuff all the time. So let's just send in our Crypt Ghouls, and then we'll send our hounds out here to see the charge. Boom! Yeah, that's a bit more damage. So we're going to use a flank charge with our hounds. As I said, they're not the most chargy, but they're better than the Fel Bats. And the biggest thing is just morale. Even if these did no damage whatsoever, they're going to help break the units. So as you can see, our Crypt Horrors, I keep saying Crypt Ghouls, our Wrecking Faces, or even the heroes decided to join us. See, that's nice of him. After the battle's almost lost, you've decided to join. Should we just for giggles, should we just... They're vampire counts. They're not going to care about their own troops. Let's just... Yeah, there you go. That's a beautiful cast, actually. did the damage. Unlike most Vortex, this is a Wind of Death sort of fires away like that. It doesn't just randomly hover about and stuff like that. So that's just helped break the units there with that cast there. Right, and we're just going to finish off the hero. So as you can see, very, very fighty. Our Direwolves are crumbling because they've lost so many of their number. But they're... And also, any quick unit, Fel Bats, Direwolves, are also really good. You know, at the end of the battle when it says, victory, you've won, you can end the battle now, or you can carry on for a bit. I always advise to carry on for a bit, especially if you've got Fel Bats and Direwolves, because you can chase down a lot more enemy infantry, so you can kill them or ransom them off and all that sort of thing. With I'm not even sure if you can with the Vampire Counts, totally forgot. But there you go, guys. There's my mini guides to these 3 units. I think they're definitely worth having a unit or 2 of each in the battle. Like I said, Crypt Horrors, part of your main battle line, going after sort of big enemy units. They can really pack a punch, but also debuff the enemy. The Direwolves and the Fel Bats are much more utility units. They're just going to be helping out, picking off weak targets. The Fel Bats especially can just sort of... If they can just charge the back line and get 3 missile infantry units to run away a bit, or stop firing, or stop concentrating on your main force, then they've done their job. They don't actually have to do any damage to be important to the army. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hit the like button if you did, and subscribe if you're new to the place, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.